The laughter in the Draxan officer's lounge cut off the moment Lyriel walked in. She did not look at them. She never did anymore. Her scaled tail dragged behind her as she crossed to the drink station, poured herself a cup of bitter root water, and sat in the corner booth alone. The whispers started again within seconds. There she is, the one who married the soft thing. I heard he cries when the ship hits turbulence. She could have had Captain Vrennick. She chose a skin bag instead. Lyriel's claws tightened around the cup. 3 cycles. 3 full cycles since her bonding ceremony with Daniel. And still the jokes never stopped. Her people, the Draxan, were a race of warriors with thick armored hides, jaws that could crush steel plating, and a culture built around strength and open combat. Softness was shame. Quietness was weakness. And Daniel Ward was the quietest human she had ever met. She set the cup down and stood up. She would not give them the satisfaction of watching her drink in silence. She walked out with her head high, and the laughter followed her down the corridor. The trade vessel Morning Tide was not a warship. It carried medical supplies, food crates, and rare minerals between the outer colonies. Lyriel was its security commander, and Daniel was its ship medic. They had met on this very ship 4 cycles ago, when Daniel patched up a claw wound she had gotten in a bar fight on Station KF9. He had cleaned the wound without flinching, had stitched it with steady hands, and had asked her name only after he was done working. She had fallen in love with him slowly, the way a stone is worn smooth by water. He listened. He remembered small things. He brought her warm broth when she came off long shifts. He never raised his voice. Not once. And that, the Draxan said, was the problem. Lyriel stepped into the medical bay. Daniel was at the counter, sorting small glass vials into a rack. He looked up and smiled when he saw her. His brown eyes crinkled at the corners. "You look like you want to bite someone," he said. "I want to bite all of them. I can offer you a sandwich instead." She let out a low rumble that was almost a laugh. He pulled out a folded cloth from under the counter, unwrapped it, and held out a small sandwich he had made hours ago. She took it with her clawed hand and sat on the examination table. He stood near her, not touching, not crowding. Just there. "They were talking about you again," she said. "They always talk about me. It bothers me. It doesn't bother me." She looked at him. His hair was going gray at the sides. His hands were steady as he went back to sorting vials. He was a full head shorter than her. His arms were thin compared to a Draxan warrior's. He looked, to any passing eye, exactly like what her people said he was. A soft creature. A pet, not a partner. But Lyriel had seen him work through a plague outbreak on the Juran colony without sleeping for 4 days. She had seen him hold a dying engineer's hand and speak softly until the man stopped breathing. She had seen him carry a wounded child through a burning corridor with smoke in his lungs. She knew what he was. The others did not. "Finish your food," Daniel said. "You have a shift in 20 minutes." She ate. He worked. The ship hummed around them. Later that night, in their small quarters, Lyriel lay on her side with her tail curled around Daniel's legs. He was reading something on his datapad, his face lit by the soft blue glow. She watched him in the dim light. "Daniel, do you ever wish I were human?" He set the datapad down. He turned and looked at her for a long moment. "No," he said. "I never wish that." "Why not?" "Because then you wouldn't be you." She did not know how to answer that. So she just pressed her forehead against his shoulder and closed her eyes. The alert came at shift change the next morning. Lyriel was on the bridge when the communications officer, a nervous Selen named Tovek, spun his chair around with wide eyes. "Commander, we have a distress signal. Close range. Hallo Rim Sector." Lyriel straightened. "Source, unregistered vessel. Audio only. They say their reactor is failing." The captain, an old Draxan named Harvick, rumbled from his seat. "Play it." The signal crackled through the bridge speakers. A voice, thin and panicked, spoke in trade standard. The ship was damaged. 6 souls aboard. Children among them. "Please respond." Lyriel's scales prickled. Something about the voice felt wrong. Too clean, too well-paced for panic. "Captain," she said carefully, "the Hollow Rim has been flagged for raider activity the last 2 months. This could be a false signal." Harvick grunted. "Or it could be 6 dying souls and 2 children." We are medical transport. We respond. She opened her mouth to argue. Then she closed it. She was security, not command. The orders were made. The morning tide turned its bow toward the signal source and began to close the distance. Lyriel stood at her console and felt her claws flex against her palms without meaning to. She did not know why, but she wanted Daniel on the bridge. She wanted him near her. She sent him a quick message through the ship's system. Stay close to the medical bay. Something feels wrong, he replied in seconds. Already there. Be careful, Leary. The morning tide sailed on toward the waiting dark. The first explosion tore through the starboard engine, housing before the bridge crew even saw the attackers coming. The morning tide shuddered like a struck animal. Alarm screamed. The lights dimmed, flickered, then came back in emergency red. Lyriel was thrown against her console. She caught herself with one clawed hand and spun back to the view screen. 3 shapes had peeled away from the drifting distress vessel. Boarding cutters. Fast, ugly, amot. They were already halfway to the morning tide. Shields. Harvick roared. Shields are down. Tovek shouted back. The pulse fried the relay. We have nothing. Lyriel slammed her palm on the security channel. All crew, this is a raider attack. Arm yourselves and fall back to defensive points. Medical bay, lock your doors. She grabbed her shock rifle from the wall rack and sprinted for the main corridor. Behind her, Captain Harvick was already unclasping his ceremonial blade from the bridge wall. He was old, but he was still Draxon. He would die standing. The boarding cutters hit the hull with 3 deep bangs that Lyriel felt in her bones. Cutting torches flared. Smoke poured through the seams. Within seconds, the outer airlock was a glowing hole, and the first raiders came through. They were Shardclaw. Lyriel knew the markings. Scavenger pirates from the Deep Rim, armored in stolen plating, wielding short-blade rifles and close combat cleavers. There were 12 of them in the first wave. Then more. She opened fire. 2 went down. Harvick met the third with his blade and took its head clean off. For a moment, the defenders held. Then the second cutter hit the port side, and the third hit from below. They were surrounded. Lyriel fought with everything she had. Her claws tore through one raider's throat. Her tail swept another off his feet. She took a cleaver across her shoulder and felt the hot line of blood run down her chest plate. She kept fighting, but there were too many. She saw Harvick go down under 3 attackers at once. She saw Tovek dragged from a bridge, his thin arms bound behind him. She felt something heavy slam into the back of her skull, and the red lights of the corridor spun and went dark. When she came back to herself, she was on her knees in the cargo bay. Her hands were locked behind her in a Draxon-grade restraint. Her head throbbed. Blood crusted on her scales. The cargo bay was full. Every surviving crew member of the Morning Tide was lined up on their knees along the wall. Tovek, the 2 engineers, the cook, the junior pilot, a young Draxon female barely out of her first molt. And at the end of the line, still in his white medic's coat, was Daniel. His hands were bound. His lip was split, but his eyes were calm. Lyriel's heart squeezed. The raiders moved through the bay in loose groups. At the center stood their leader. He was a Brunnith, one of the bone-ridged, scarred warrior species from the Outer Belt. His name, by the markings on his chest plate, was Vorik. He was nearly as tall as a Draxon and twice as wide. His face was a roadmap of old knife wounds. Vorik walked down the line of prisoners slowly, stopping at each one to study them like meat. He paused in front of the young pilot. He ran a clawed finger down her cheek. She shook but did not flinch. Pretty, Vorik said in rough trade standard. We keep her. Lyriel strained against her restraints. Touch her, and I will rip your spine out. Vorik turned. He smiled, showing 2 rows of jagged teeth. He walked over to Lyriel with slow, heavy steps. Security officer, he said, reading the mark on her collar. The angry one. Good. I like the angry ones. He crouched down in front of her. His breath smelled like old meat. The ship's NAV computer is locked with a command-level code, he said. Your captain is dead. That leaves you. Give me the code, and I let half your crew live. Refuse, and I kill them one by one, starting with the prettiest. Lyriel bared her teeth. I will give you nothing. Vorik stood up. He did not look angry. He looked pleased. He struck her across the face with the back of his armored hand. Her head snapped sideways. She tasted blood. She spat it onto his boot. He struck her again and again. The fourth blow split the scale above her left eye. She sagged, dizzy, and he grabbed her jaw in his huge hand and forced her to look at him. The code, Draxon, or the little one dies first. Do what you want, Lyriel rasped. You will get nothing. Vorik sighed like a disappointed teacher. He turned toward the young pilot and raised his blade rifle. And then a voice, quiet and steady, spoke from the end of the line. Wait. Every head in the cargo bay turned. It was Daniel. He had not moved. He had not even lifted his face until now. When he did, his eyes were strange. Not afraid. Not angry. Just watching. Studying, Vorik laughed. The sound rolled around the cargo bay. The soft one speaks. What do you want, little medic? Just a moment, Daniel said. She needs a moment. She's not thinking clearly because of the head wound you gave her. Give her 30 seconds, and she'll talk. Vorik tilted his head. The request amused him. 30 seconds, then. Daniel's gaze shifted. He looked at Lyriel, and only at Lyriel. Lyri, he said softly. Stay down. Don't fight them yet. Just stay down. Please. She stared at him. Something in his voice, something old and cold, made her scales stand up. She had never heard that tone from him before. Not once in 3 cycles. She lowered her head. She said nothing. Daniel looked back at Vorik and gave him a small, polite nod. Thank you, he said. And then he went still again. Lyriel did not understand. Not yet. But she was going to. Hours passed in the cargo bay. The raiders ate, drank, laughed, and argued. They dragged crates out of storage and smashed them open looking for valuables. They stripped the bodies of Harvick and the other dead crew. They spat on the corpses as they worked. Lyriel sat with her back against the cold metal wall, wrists bound, watching. Her head had stopped spinning. The cut above her, I had crusted over. Her shoulder wound still bled slowly, soaking into her uniform. She could have killed 10 of them before they took her down, she thought. But only if her hands were free, and the cuffs on her wrists were Draxon grade. Even she could not break them. Beside her, separated by 2 other prisoners, sat Daniel. He had not spoken since his strange request. He had not moved much either, but his eyes never stopped moving. Lyriel watched him from the corner of her vision, and slowly she began to understand that her husband was doing something. His gaze went to the guard by the door, then to the guard by the supply crates, then up to the ventilation grate above the medical cabinet, then to Vorik, who was arguing with one of his lieutenants near the cargo lift. Every few minutes his eyes moved again in the same pattern. He was counting. He was measuring. He was mapping. When Vorik's back was turned, Daniel shifted his weight slightly and leaned closer to Lyriel. His voice was so low it barely reached her. 11 left on this deck. For sleeping in the mess. 2 in engineering. 1 on the bridge. For here. Total count around 22. She stared at him. How can you know that? I watched them come in. I counted boots. I counted voices. 4 of the ones in the mess are drunk already. One of the guards here has a medical condition. See how he keeps touching his side? Kidney stones, probably. He'll be useless in a real fight. Lyriel's jaw worked. Daniel, what are you saying to me? He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I need to tell you something. I should have told you before. I am sorry I did not. Tell me. Before I was a ship medic, he said softly, I was a combat medic. 9 years. Terran Frontier Wars. I served on 6 different boarding actions. 3 of them were from the other side. I was the one doing the boarding. She stared at him. Her scales went cold. You told me you were a doctor on a colony. I was. After. The war ended, and I left. I did not want that life anymore. I wanted to heal people, not take them apart. I never planned to need those skills again. I never wanted you to see that part of me. Daniel, I know. You never told me. I know, Lyri. I am sorry. She watched his face in the red emergency light. He did not look like the Daniel she knew. There was still softness in his eyes, but behind it was something else. Something patient. Something that had seen bad things and remembered them. How bad was it, she whispered. Bad enough that I do not talk about it. How many did you kill? He did not answer that. He just looked at her. She swallowed. The ache in her shoulder suddenly felt very small. What do we do? She asked. We wait. And we watch. Every hour, Vorik is going to get more comfortable. Every hour, his men are going to get more drunk and more bored. When the time is right, I'm going to move. I need you to not fight them until I tell you. Can you do that? She wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him she was the warrior. She was the soldier. She was the one who should be moving. But she looked at his face, and she saw that he already knew all those things. And he still wanted her to wait. Yes, she said. Good. He was quiet for a moment. Then he added, and Leary, what? Tell the young pilot to stop shaking. Vorik is watching her. If she keeps looking like prey, he will take her sooner. Lyriel hissed softly down the line, and the young pilot, who had been trembling uncontrollably, lifted her head. Lyriel caught her eye and gave her a slow, steady nod. The young pilot took a deep breath and forced her body to still. It was not perfect, but it was enough. More time passed. Vorik came through the bay twice to check on the prisoners. The second time, he stopped in front of Daniel and kicked his boot. Still quiet, soft one. Yes, Daniel said. You're not afraid. I am afraid. Good. Vorik laughed and walked away. Daniel watched him go. His face did not change, but his eyes followed the Brunnith all the way out of the bay, and Lyriel saw something in her husband's gaze that was not fear at all. Near the 4th hour of captivity, Daniel shifted his hands slowly behind his back. Lyriel could not see what he was doing, but she could feel the small, deliberate movements through the metal floor. She realized, after a minute, that he was working on something. She leaned her head back against the wall and pretended to doze. 12 minutes later, she heard the softest click. Then Daniel's voice, barely a breath in the air. I need you to listen very carefully, Leary. In about 20 minutes, when the guard rotation changes, I'm going to stand up. I'm going to walk to the medical bay. I'm going to come back. When I come back, the next 3 minutes are going to be very fast. Do not stand until I tell you. Daniel, what is it? How did you get out of the cuffs? He almost smiled. A good medic always carries a dental pick in his sleeve. The guard rotation changed at the 20-minute mark, just as Daniel had said it would. One of the shard claw by the door yawned, stretched, and wandered off toward the mess hall to be replaced by a thinner raider who looked half asleep. The other guard had already been distracted by a game of dice with 2 of his crewmates on the far side of the bay. Daniel waited another full minute. Then he stood up. He did it casually, like a man with a stiff back who needed to stretch. He kept his bound-looking hands behind him. He walked, not toward the door, but toward the cargo bay's side corridor, where the medical bay was located. The sleepy guard glanced at him and raised his rifle halfway. Sit down, soft one. I need to use the waist chute, Daniel said in a tired voice. Unless you want me to use it right here. The raiders at the dice game laughed. The sleepy guard grunted and waved his rifle toward the corridor. Make it fast. I watched the door. Daniel nodded and walked past him. Lyriel's heart hammered against her ribs. She did not move. She did not look. She stared straight ahead at the opposite wall and counted her own breathing. 1 minute passed. 2. 3. On the 4th minute, Daniel walked back through the door. He looked exactly the same as when he left. His hands were still behind his back. He sat back down in his old spot against the wall. The sleepy guard did not even glance at him. Done. Lyriel breathed. Phase 1 done, Daniel whispered. I disabled the internal sensors on this deck. They cannot see through their own ship now. I also took 3 vials of Siroxin from the veterinary locker and a pressure injector. Siroxin is a sedative. We use it to knock out large reptiles before surgery. Brunniths are close enough biologically that it should drop them in under 10 seconds. How do you get it to them? They are armored. I do not give it to them directly. The life support system in the mess hall shares an air loop with the forward crew bunks. I can vent the Siroxin as an aerosol. It will go through the mess first. That is 4 of their drunk ones. And the rest, I deal with them another way. She looked at him sideways. His voice was still soft, still calm. He was talking about killing nearly 24 armed raiders the way another man might talk about fixing a broken hinge. Daniel, yes. I do not know this person you are being right now. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I know. I'm sorry, Leary. Do not be sorry. Just come back to me when this is done. He nodded. And then, slowly, he slipped his hands out of the loose cuffs he had been pretending to wear and turned in one smooth movement, away from the wall. He was on his feet and into the side corridor before any of the guards noticed he had moved. 20 seconds later, the lights in the mess hall flickered. Someone in there coughed. Then someone else. Then there was the heavy sound of a body hitting the deck. Then another. Then silence. The sleepy guard at the cargo bay door turned his head. "Boy," he called. "Perel? Curvin? What was that?" No answer. The guard frowned and stepped into the corridor. He walked 3 paces and never walked a fourth. There was a soft, quick thud, and he dropped sideways out of sight. The rifle clattered. Then nothing. The 2 raiders at the dice game looked up. One of them stood. "Perel." From the corridor came the softest whisper of movement. Then Daniel stepped around the corner. He had the sleepy guard's rifle in his hands. He fired twice. Both raiders at the dice table dropped before either of them could shout. The prisoners along the wall stared, frozen. Daniel walked calmly to Lyriel and crouched down. He produced a small key card from his pocket, one he had taken off the sleepy guard, and unlocked her cuffs. Then he moved down the line, one prisoner at a time, unlocking each of them. He did not say a word until every crew member was free. When he spoke, his voice was low and controlled. "Listen, all of you. There are roughly 15 to 17 raiders left alive on this ship. Most of them do not know anything is wrong yet. I need you to do exactly what I say. The young pilot and the cook are going to take the 2 rifles I just got and hold this cargo bay. You shoot anyone who comes through that door who is not one of us. Understand?" The young pilot nodded fiercely. She took a rifle and stood up straighter than Lyriel had ever seen her stand. "Tovek," Daniel continued, "you're going to the bridge through the service tube. The lone guard up there is a shardclaw named Ruck. He has a knee brace. If you drop him, he goes down hard. Can you do that?" Tovek, thin and terrified, swallowed and nodded. "The 2 engineers are going to the reactor room. Do not engage. Just lock yourselves in and restart the ship's defensive systems. Once the shields come back up, we have won because their ships outside will not be able to dock anymore." They nodded. Daniel turned to Lyriel last. "You are with me." Her chest swelled with something she could not name. "Pride. Fear. Love. All 3. Where are we going?" "Engine Bay," Daniel said. "That is where Vorik will go when he realizes the ship is slipping out of his hands. He will want to destroy the reactor on his way out. We are going to be waiting for him." Lyriel picked up a fallen cleaver from a dead raider. Her bound shoulder ached. She did not care. "Lead the way, husband." Daniel's eyes softened for just a second. Then the softness was gone again, and he moved. Smoke drifted through the corridors of the morning tide. The emergency lights pulsed in slow red waves. Somewhere above, a blast door tried and failed to close, grinding against a piece of debris wedged in its track. The ship was wounded, but it was alive, and it was fighting back. Daniel moved through it like he had built the thing himself. He knew every turn, every blind corner, every maintenance access panel. Lyriel followed 2 steps behind him, cleaver in hand, watching her husband work. Twice, they heard boots coming. Both times, Daniel raised a single finger, pressed himself against the wall, and let the raiders pass. He was not interested in the foot soldiers. He was hunting one target only. Near the 3rd deck junction, they heard the first roar. It was Vorik. His voice rolled through the ship's speakers, distorted and furious. "My men are dying. Someone is in the ship. Find them. Find them and bring me their heads." Daniel allowed himself a thin smile. "Good. He is angry. Angry men make mistakes." They pressed on. The engine bay was 4 decks below, past the main cargo lift, and through a long service tunnel that ran along the spine of the ship. Daniel did not take the obvious route. Instead, he opened a narrow maintenance hatch behind a coolant pipe and waved Lyriel through. The tunnel was dark, hot, and barely wide enough for her shoulders. "How do you know all this?" she whispered. "I have walked every hall of this ship in 3 cycles," he said. "When you love someone, you learn their home." She did not answer. She could not. They came out behind the engine bay's upper gantry, in a small shadowed space above the main reactor housing. Daniel crouched and pointed down. Lyriel looked over the edge. Vorik was already there. The Bruneth had come alone, or almost alone. Two of his lieutenants were at the bay entrance, rifles raised, scanning the walkways. Vorik himself stood at the reactor control panel, tearing the safety housing off with his bare hands. He was going to overload it. He was going to kill the ship and everyone on it rather than lose the fight. Daniel leaned close to Lyriel's ear. The two at the door. I need them silent. Can you do it? Yes. Go. She slipped along the upper gantry like a shadow. Her tail did not scrape the metal. Her claws did not click. 3 cycles of mockery had not made her soft. She was still Draxen, and Draxen knew how to kill quietly when they chose to. She dropped on the first lieutenant from above. Her cleaver opened his throat before he could cry out. The second turned, raised his rifle, and took a tail whip across the jaw that broke his neck in one clean snap. Both were on the floor in under 4 seconds. Vorik heard the second body fall, thought he spun around. His eyes, red and enormous, locked on Lyriel across the bay. You, he snarled. He reached for his heavy rifle, and Daniel stepped out from the shadows behind him. Hello, Captain. Vorik whirled. His rifle came up. Daniel was already moving. He did not shoot. He did not even have a gun. In his right hand was only a thin, curved blade about the length of a forearm. A medic's bones saw. Vorik laughed. The sound was ugly. The soft one. You killed my men with gas and tricks. Now you come at me with a toy? Come, little medic. Come and die. Daniel did not answer. He just moved. Lyriel had seen many Draxen warriors fight. She had seen Harvick at his best, and Harvick at his best was a legend. But she had never seen anything like what her husband did in the next 90 seconds. Daniel did not try to match Vorik's strength. He did not try to meet him head-on. He ducked under the first swing of the heavy rifle and came up under Vorik's arm, drawing a thin red line across the soft place behind the brunt of his elbow. Vorik roared and swung again. Daniel was already not there, but he moved in small circles. He stayed on Vorik's wounded side. Every time Vorik swung, Daniel took something. A cut to the inside of the wrist, a cut behind the knee, a shallow line across the exposed place where the neck plating met the shoulder. He was not trying to kill Vorik quickly. He was bleeding him, slowly, patiently, like a doctor preparing a body for surgery. Vorik realized it too late. His swings grew wild. His footing grew uncertain. He bellowed and charged, hoping to crush the small human with his sheer weight. Daniel sidestepped, hooked his boot around Vorik's ankle, and used the brunt of his own momentum to send him crashing into the exposed plasma coupling he had pulled open minutes before Vorik's armor made contact with live current. His body jerked once, hard, and went still. Smoke curled from the joints of his plating. The engine bay went quiet. Daniel stood for a long moment, breathing steadily, the bones saw still in his hand. Then, slowly, his shoulders lowered. His hand started to shake just a little. He wiped the blade on a rag from his pocket, folded it closed, and tucked it away. Lyriel crossed the bay and stood in front of him. She searched his face. Daniel, I am all right. Are you? He looked up at her. His eyes were wet, but his voice was steady. No, he said, but I will be. Later. Above them, the ship's lights shifted from emergency red to standard white. The engineers had restored power. The shields were up. Through the corridor speakers, Tovek's shaking voice crackled through. Bridge is clear. Ship is ours. The raider cutters are trying to detach. Shields are holding. We won. Lyriel pulled Daniel against her chest and held him for a long time, and neither of them said anything at all. The Draxen Stellar Core cruiser arrived 9 hours later. By then, the surviving crew of the Morning Tide had moved their dead into the forward hold and wrapped each body in a clean cloth. They had also bound the 6 raiders who had surrendered in the final minutes and locked them in the cargo bay, where they themselves had knelt the day before Vorik's body was left in the engine room. No one wanted to touch it. The core boarding team came through the airlock in full armor, rifles raised, expecting to find a broken ship full of corpses. Instead, they found Lyriel waiting in the bridge corridor, her uniform still stained with dried blood, her head held high. The commanding officer of the cruiser was an older Draxen named Threxel. He had known Lyriel since she was a hatchling. He had also been one of the loudest voices at her bonding ceremony 3 cycles ago, telling her she was making a mistake. Threxel stared at the cargo bay. He stared at the 6 bound raiders. He stared at the engine room video feed that Tovek played for him, showing the last moments of Vorik's life in flickering black and white. Then he stared at Daniel, who was standing quietly behind Lyriel, a blanket around his shoulders, a cup of water in his hands. "Who did this?" Threxel asked. Lyriel turned and looked at her husband. "He did," she said. Threxel was silent for a very long time. "The human," he said finally. "Yes," Lyriel said. "The human." Threxel walked over to Daniel. The old Draxon towered over him. He leaned down until his snout was almost level with Daniel's face. He studied him for a long moment. Daniel did not look away. He did not shrink. He just held his cup of water in both hands and waited. "I owe you an apology, Medic," Threxel said at last. "No, sir. I do. I said things about you. At the ceremony. I said them again many times." "I know," Leary told me. "And you're not angry." "I'm tired, sir. I do not have room for anger right now." Threxel made a low rumbling sound that was almost a laugh, and almost something else. He straightened up and clapped Daniel on the shoulder so hard that the smaller man nearly spilled his water. "Well spoken. Rest, Medic. We'll take it from here." Threxel turned to give orders to his boarding team, and the Corps moved through the morning tide like a clean wind, collecting the prisoners, treating the wounded, counting the dead. Lyriel watched them work for a few minutes, and then she took Daniel by the hand and led him back to their small quarters. She closed the door behind them. Daniel sat down on the edge of the bunk. He set the cup of water on the side table, and then, slowly, he leaned forward and put his face in his hands that he did not cry. Not exactly, but his shoulders shook, and he stayed bent over like that for a long time, and Lyriel knelt in front of him and did not say a word until he was ready. When he finally sat up, his eyes were red. "I did not want you to see that," he whispered. "I did not want anyone to see that. I left that life for a reason, Leary. I am not that man anymore." "You are both," she said. "No, I am not. I cannot be. You are the man who counts boots and maps ventilation ducts and saves an entire crew with 3 vials of sedative. And you're the man who brings me soup when I am angry and rubs my shoulder when it hurts and reads me bad jokes from his datapad at night. You are both, Daniel. I love both." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached out and put his hand against the side of her face, against the scales still crusted with old blood. His hand was steady again. "I love you, Leary. I know. Sleep now." He slept. She sat next to him and watched him breathe. 3 days later, when a morning tide was docked for repairs at Station Keth. 9, and most of the crew had gone planetside to rest. Lyriel sat alone on the observation deck and opened a message channel to the Draxon homeworld. Her family was on the other side. Her 3 brothers, her grandmother, her cousins, all the warriors who had laughed at her choice. She did not record a long message. She did not explain. She did not argue. She just spoke one line into the channel, her voice steady and quiet. "You were wrong about him. You were wrong about all of them." Then she closed the channel. She sat for a while longer, watching the stars while slowly past the viewport, and then she got up and went to find her husband. Daniel was in the medical bay, sleeves rolled up, restocking supplies. He smiled when he saw her. He always smiled when he saw her. "There you are," he said. "I was about to come looking. I was sending a message home." "Yeah? What did you say?" She walked over and took the clipboard gently out of his hands. She set it on the counter. She put her arms around him and pulled him close. "I told them the truth," she said. He pressed his face against her shoulder. She felt him smile against her scales. Outside the viewport, the stars kept turning, and the morning tide rocked gently in its dock, and the universe went on being what it had always been, but 2 people inside it had become something new together, and that was enough. That IT was more than enough.